Most people don't realize how much their personal information is being bought and sold every day. Data brokers are making billions, pulling details about you from public records and the internet, and then packaging and selling it, usually without your consent. That's how your information lands in the hands of scammers, spammers, even stalkers. It's why you get endless robocalls and why ads seem to follow you everywhere. That's where Aura comes in. Aura actively removes your data from broker sites and keeps it off. They also instantly alert you if your information shows up in a breach or on the dark web. But Aura goes beyond data protection. With one app, you get a VPN, antivirus, password manager, spam call protection, dark web monitoring, and even up to $5 million in identity theft insurance, all backed by 24/7 US-based fraud support. Other companies might sell just credit monitoring or just a VPN. Aura gives you all of it, together, at the same price competitors charge for just one service. Start your free trial today at aura.com/remove. Protect yourself now at aura.com/remove.
You're listening to Make It.
Welcome to Summaries. Let's dive in. I'm Alex Ivy.
And I'm Allison Inverness.
So imagine you are like 22 years old, right?
Okay.
You've hit what most people would consider the Hollywood lottery. You know, you've moved to Los Angeles. You're consistently booking these lucrative national commercials, making massive money.
Yeah, the dream.
Exactly. Living a dream that millions of people would literally kill for. So why are you hiding in your trailer on set, staring at your watch, just praying for the day to end so you can go get dinner?
It sounds completely counterintuitive, honestly. Like you have the golden ticket, but the chocolate tastes terrible.
Yeah, exactly.
Today, our mission is to unpack the fascinating, hard-earned wisdom of someone who lived that exact scenario. Her name is Caroline Locorriere, and she's the founder and lead coach of the Nashville Acting Studio.
Such a cool story.
It really is. And we're pulling this from a fantastic deep dive hosted by Chris Barkley and Nick Bugs.
And we are looking at this like masterclass in figuring out what you actually want out of life, but it's totally hidden inside a conversation about the craft of acting.
Right.
Caroline's journey, her incredibly empathetic teaching methods, and her insights on surviving such a subjective industry are just profound. And honestly, you do not need to be a struggling actor to get something out of this.
Not at all.
If you're trying to navigate any difficult field, or just trying to figure out if you're on the right career path, her advice is a perfect blueprint.
Absolutely. So going back to that trailer in Los Angeles, Caroline had a realization that completely altered her trajectory. She noticed the other actors on set, the ones who were truly meant to be doing this for a living, were out there networking, talking to the crew, just soaking in the chaotic environment of a live set.
Right, they were loving it.
Exactly, they thrived on it. Meanwhile, sitting alone in her trailer, she realized she actually preferred being back in an acting class, analyzing the craft, over being on a set, executing it for a camera. She needed to achieve the success to realize it was the wrong kind of success.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Right.
Because I think this happens to so many of us in, total different careers. It's like spending years aggressively climbing a ladder, putting in all this intense effort, only to reach the top, look around, and realize it's leaning against the wrong building.
Oh, that is a perfect way to visualize it. What's fascinating here is that she didn't double down on the mistake.
Right.
Because human psychology usually traps us in the sunk cost fallacy. People think, well, I'm already in LA, I have a great agent, I'm booking national work, I have to stay, I've invested way too much to quit now.
Yeah, that pressure is real.
It is. But Caroline's willingness to listen to her own dissatisfaction rather than suppressing it became her absolute greatest asset. She didn't force a career that didn't fit her internal compass. She left LA, moved back home to Nashville, and serendipitously landed a job teaching at Belmont University.
Which is wild because I was looking at her background and her master's degree wasn't even in theater.
No, not at all. Her master's from Ohio State was in women's and African American studies.
Wow.
Yeah, she actually wrote her thesis on how black and white women essayists, specifically writers like Toni Morrison, discussed social change and revolution. She was deeply interested in storytelling, cultural mechanics, and human dynamics.
So Belmont took a chance on her anyway.
Belmont took a chance on her because she had that academic rigor combined with 4 years spent in a highly reputable acting studio out in Los Angeles.
And she essentially built their acting for camera curriculum completely from scratch, right?
She did.
She was so effective at teaching it and so beloved by the students she mentored that by 2008, her graduating classes literally begged her to open a private studio so they could continue their training with her.
Yeah.
That grassroots demand is exactly how the National Acting Studio was born.
And building a studio on demand like that really speaks to the core of how she teaches, because her method is a radical departure from the industry standard she had survived back in Los Angeles. She actively rejects what she calls the whiplash method of coaching.
Okay, so let's talk about that whiplash method for a second, because historically, that's the vibe in a lot of high-level elite acting classes. There's this intense browbeating.
Oh, yeah, very intense.
The instructor pushes an actor, screams at them, breaks down their defenses until they basically dissolve into a puddle on the floor.
Right.
Caroline describes that old school method as emotional terrorism. And she completely refuses to do it. She says, I'm a lover. She leads with empathy, regularly crying with her students during scene work, and she refuses to force a student into a vulnerable emotional space before they are ready.
She prioritizes the psychological safety of the human being over the immediate product of the actor.
I have to admit, I'm going to play devil's advocate here.
Think for it.
Because, well, isn't there a reason that whiplash method exists in the first place? I mean, we always hear that pressure makes diamonds. If I'm a director, I might not care about an actor's long-term therapy bills, you know?
Right.
I care about what we capture on film on a Friday afternoon. If you're trying to get a raw, gritty, Oscar-worthy performance out of someone, think about Kubrick allegedly tormenting Shelley Duvall on the set of The Shining. How does a coach or director get that level of raw desperation just by being a lover? Doesn't the art sometimes demand that you tear the artist down?
It's a completely valid question, and it's the exact defense people use to justify toxic environments, whether that's on a film set or, in a corporate boardroom.
Sure.
But we have to look at the mechanism of what's actually happening to the actor.
Yeah.
If a coach uses emotional terrorism, they might trigger a genuine trauma response. The actor enters fight or flight, and they produce a very raw, very real reaction of fear or despair. It looks incredibly impressive in the room, but it's a parlor trick.
Because it's not sustainable.
Precisely. It leaves the actor traumatized, and more importantly for their career, it leaves them dependent. They cannot access that emotional depth on their own on a Tuesday morning at an audition unless someone is there to terrorize them into it.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
They haven't learned a craft. They've just survived an attack. Caroline's empathetic method is about building sustainable tools. When she cries with them in a scene, she's modeling how to safely open the door to those dark emotions, utilize them for the story, and then safely close the door and go home. She is building self-sufficient artists, not dependent victims.
That reframes it completely.
Yeah.
She's not just being nice for the sake of being nice. She's providing a technical framework for emotional endurance. If you manage a team at an office, the same logic applies, right?
Exactly.
You can terrorize your team into hitting a deadline once, but they will burn out and leave. If you empower them, they can hit deadlines repeatedly without you having to scream at them.
That is the perfect parallel. But as Caroline points out, having all the empathy and all the deep feelings in the world is useless if you don't have the technical mechanism to deliver it.
Right.
Emotion without technique is just therapy, which is why she grounds her beginners in 3 core pillars of the craft.
The first pillar she mentions sounds almost insultingly simple at first glance. It's just learning how to stay a human being when the camera turns on.
It sounds easy until a massive lens with a red light is pointed directly at your face.
Why is that so difficult, though? I mean, we're all human beings all day long.
Because the moment the camera rolls, self-awareness completely hijacks your nervous system.
Yeah.
Your breathing becomes shallow, you hold tension in your jaw and shoulders, your micro-expressions freeze up.
Oh, I hate being on camera, so I get that.
Right. You stop listening to the person across from you and start watching yourself from the outside. Caroline's first goal is to teach actors how to drop that physical and psychological armor. You have to learn how to breathe, blink, and exist naturally while under intense, unnatural scrutiny.
Which opens up the space for the second pillar, which is accessing your own emotional life. Once the armor is down, the well is available. But it's a third pillar that really blew my mind because she demands real intellectual rigor here. The third pillar is script analysis.
Yeah, she approaches storytelling with absolute precision. She forces actors to stop looking at just their own lines and start mapping out the psychological architecture of the scene.
Let's get into the mechanics of that, because it's not just reading words with feeling. She teaches them to ask, like, what is my character's core objective? What do I want from the other person in this scene?
Right.
Then what is the obstacle in my way? And finally, what specific tactic am I using to overcome that obstacle? If a character says, I'm leaving, the tactic completely changes the delivery. Are they saying it to inflict pain?
Exactly.
Are they saying it to test if the other person will beg them to stay? Or to protect themselves from crying? It turns acting from playing pretend into applied behavioral science.
And that behavioral science has to be executed within a highly specific physical boundary, which she calls camera appropriateness. This is where the technical reality of the medium crashes into the art. You have to know your frame. You need to understand eye lines. You have to hit a piece of tape on the floor without looking down at it, while simultaneously delivering a heartbreaking monologue.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me, because camera appropriateness is exactly like a musician needing to fully understand how a microphone works before they can record a hit song.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Right. You could have the most beautiful, soulful voice on the plants, all that raw emotion and natural talent. But if you're screaming directly into a highly sensitive condenser mic, the audio will clip and distort. If you're standing 3 rooms away, no one will hear you. The technical execution can completely ruin the art.
Most people don't realize how much their personal information is being bought and sold every day. Data brokers are making billions, pulling details about you from public records and the internet, and then packaging and selling it, usually without your consent. That's how your information lands in the hands of scammers, spammers, even stalkers. It's why you get endless robocalls and why ads seem to follow you everywhere. That's where Aura comes in. Aura actively removes your data from broker sites and keeps it off. They also instantly alert you if your information shows up in a breach or on the dark web. But Aura goes beyond data protection. With one app, you get a VPN, antivirus, password manager, spam call protection, dark web monitoring, and even up to $5 million in identity theft insurance, all backed by 24/7 US-based fraud support. Other companies might sell just credit monitoring or just a VPN. Aura gives you all of it, together, at the same price competitors charge for just one service. Start your free trial today at aura.com/remove. Protect yourself now at aura.com/remove.
The raw talent is useless if you ignore the parameters of the frame it lives inside.
That translates perfectly to the screen. Knowing the difference between acting for a wide shot, where you have to use your whole body, versus an extreme close-up, where raising an eyebrow looks like a massive theatrical event, is just vital. On a fast-paced film set, speed and technical knowledge are the ultimate currency.
Yeah, time is money.
Exactly. If you don't know your frame, the crew does not have the time to teach you. They just won't use your takes. You will look green and you won't get hired again.
The technical side is non-negotiable. But there's a fascinating limitation to all this technique and script analysis. Imagination can only take an artist so far. To truly portray humanity, you have to actually experience it.
We see this brilliantly in the story about her student, Matt Williams, who's a good-looking, charismatic, incredibly talented guy. But Caroline noticed during his scene work that his romantic performances felt hollow.
Interesting.
Yeah, they were lacking a certain depth and resonance. She stopped the class and essentially diagnosed the problem right on the spot. She realized he had never actually been in love.
So she didn't tell him to go read Stanislavski. She gave him the most intimidating homework assignment in the history of education. She literally told him, go fall in love, go take a massive emotional risk out in the real world.
It's brilliant because you can't fake the vulnerability of love just by squinting and trying to look earnest. As she notes, you don't need to do heroin to play a heroin addict. That's what research, empathy, and imagination are for. But the nuances of human connection, the terrifying surrender of giving your heart to someone, you need the lived human experience to fuel the art.
And the crazy conclusion to that story, he actually did it. He went out, fell in love, and ended up getting married.
Wow.
He brought that lived experience back to the work. So you'd think that mastering these 3 pillars, merging raw lived empathy with ruthless technical precision, would make someone undeniably successful. But that assumes Hollywood is a meritocracy. And Caroline's experience proves that it is anything but.
We have to look at the harsh, unromantic business realities of the industry. Caroline gives extremely counterintuitive advice for newcomers right out of the gate. Do not get a talent agent before you have serious training.
Which is wild because people always think the agent is step 1.
It's a fatal mistake. Casting directors are gatekeepers and they have incredibly long memories. If you get an agent prematurely and you set a self-tape that looks totally amateur, maybe you don't understand camera appropriateness or your script analysis is shallow, that casting director is going to mentally file you away as green.
Oh, that makes sense.
They won't request an audition from you again for years. You burn a bridge before you've even learned how to build one.
So her advice is to go to a class first. Find your people. She doesn't even like the corporate term networking. She prefers to call it widening your circle. Learn the craft deeply, get some local work under your belt, build a reputation, and then seek representation.
But even when you do everything right, the brutality of casting subjectivity can break your heart. Caroline shared a devastating anecdote about a brilliantly talented student of hers. This student was auditioning for a major David Fincher project, the hit show Mindhunter.
Oh, wow. A massive opportunity, a literal career-making role.
Caroline worked with her on the auditions, and she thought the students' tapes were absolutely flawless. The technique, the emotional depth, everything was perfect. But the student didn't get the part. Months later, when the show premiered, Caroline watched the episodes, analyzed the actors who did book the role, and felt objectively that the final performance on screen was genuinely less impressive than her student's audition.
So what does this all mean? I really struggle with this part of the story, honestly. We are taught from a very young age that cream rises to the top. The great myth of meritocracy says that if a creative person puts in the 10,000 hours, hones their craft, and is undeniably great, they will inevitably be discovered and rewarded. How do we reconcile that with losing a role to someone who is simply less talented?
This raises an important question, and it forces us to confront the fundamental difference between various art forms. If you write a brilliant novel or a stunning screenplay, the work exists independently on the page. It speaks for itself. It can be passed around, discovered in a drawer 50 years later, and celebrated. But acting, you are the medium.
Right.
Your physical body, your voice, your specific energy is the canvas. You must physically and visually match a highly subjective picture that already exists in a casting director or producer's head.
It's like a director is putting together a massive jigsaw puzzle. If the hole they are trying to fill is shaped like a red square, and you show up as a perfectly carved Meryl Streep-level blue circle, Bill, you don't get the job. It doesn't matter how brilliant you are, you don't fit the hole.
That is the cruel reality. Talent alone is never a guarantee in a system governed by subjective aesthetics, which is why success requires a completely different mechanism to survive. Caroline quotes a massive producer who said the single most important trait for anyone trying to make it in this business is tenacity. She points to one of her former students, Alan Powell. He wrote, produced, and starred in a movie that eventually hit #4 on all of Netflix. His secret wasn't just raw talent. He is relentlessly tenacious.
He just outlasts the subjectivity.
Exactly. He makes the cold calls. He sends the endless emails. He creates his own projects when the gatekeepers say no. He survives the system because he simply refuses to stop moving forward.
You have to be undeniable in your persistence. But here's the tricky part. Maintaining that level of tenacity over decades without becoming bitter or cynical requires a very specific psychological tool. It requires an incredible ability to listen, not just listening to directors or scene partners, but listening to the universe.
Which is a skill Caroline inherited directly from a very unexpected source, her mother.
Yeah, this detail from the sources completely fascinated me. Caroline's mother, Missy, literally taught listening skills to corporate businesses. She conducted listening labs for executives. And Caroline notes that listening on a profound, empathetic level is essentially the core of all good acting and all good coaching.
It's a beautiful generational inheritance. The mother taught active listening in the boardroom, and the daughter teaches active listening on the soundstage. But her mother also gave her a very specific, almost mystical gift when Caroline was at her absolute lowest point.
We have to go back to when Caroline first moved back from Los Angeles.
Right, when she was lost. Exactly. She didn't know what to do with her life. Her mother went to her regular Tuesday morning Bible study, and in this group was an elderly woman named Martha.
Martha, the 80-year-old Episcopalian who could see auras. You literally cannot make this up.
Martha was actually quite embarrassed by her ability, but Caroline's mother brought Caroline in to meet her anyway. Without knowing anything about Caroline's background, her struggles in LA, or the academic jobs she had just applied for, Martha looked at her and said, "Your path is and always has been as a teacher."
And Caroline, seeking some kind of concrete validation, asked, "Well, I just sent an application to Belmont University. Does that feel right?" And Martha said, "That's absolutely the right thing for you to be doing." And it was. It changed the entire trajectory of her life.
It gave her permission to trust her instincts. And you get such a great sense of Caroline's grounded personality from these stories. She's deep, she's highly empathetic, she analyzes Toni Morrison, but she's also an unabashed, die-hard Alabama football fan. In the Source interview, when she's asked who would win in a fistfight between legendary coaches Bear Bryant and Nick Saban, she didn't even hesitate. She chose Bear Bryant because, quote, "He might bite you."
He might bite you. I love that so much. It shows this gritty, old-school toughness underlying all that empathy. But zooming out and looking at this whole journey, I just marvel at the through line here. A mother who professionally taught active listening raised a daughter whose entire legacy is built on actively listening to the unspoken emotional needs of her students.
She listened to her gut in that lonely trailer in LA when her life looked like a massive success on paper, but felt entirely wrong in her bones. She listens to her students, recognizing when they need a safe psychological space instead of tyrannical drill sergeant. And she teaches actors the mechanics of listening to the hidden psychological stories buried within a script. It is all about being fully present, dropping the armor, and paying attention to the truth.
Which leaves us with something really profound to think about for our own lives. Caroline said that the very first pillar staying human when the camera turns on is the absolute hardest part of acting. But it begs the question, how often in our own daily lives do we tense up when we feel observed? Sitting in high-stakes board meetings, curating our lives for social media, or navigating a difficult conflict with a partner, how often do we put on an artificial protective performance because we feel a metaphorical camera on us? Yeah. Having the courage to drop the armor and just be a messy, vulnerable, authentic human being is a lot harder than it sounds.
It takes daily practice, and maybe just a little bit of that Bear Bryant tenacity to pull it off.
Stay inspired, and until next time, be better, be creative, be engaged, and thank you for listening.
Hey everybody, Chris here. Before you go, if you enjoy our work and want to support what we do at Make It, please subscribe to the Make It Podcast channel on YouTube and rate and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. We have terrific tees, hoodies, hats, and more at cottonbureau.com. Just search for the Make It Podcast and our store will come right up. If you have feedback for us, email us at contact@bonsai.film or find all things Make It at our Beacons AI site at www.themakeitpodcast.store. You can also follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and X at _Make It Podcast. You can find us on Facebook just by searching for The Make It Podcast. And until next time, and on behalf of the team at Make It, be better, be creative, be engaged, and thank you for listening.
Most people don't realize how much their personal information is being bought and sold every day. Data brokers are making billions, pulling details about you from public records and the internet, and then packaging and selling it, usually without your consent. That's how your information lands in the hands of scammers, spammers, even stalkers. It's why you get endless robocalls and why ads seem to follow you everywhere. That's where Aura comes in. Aura actively removes your data from broker sites and keeps it off. They also instantly alert you if your information shows up in a breach or on the dark web. But Aura goes beyond data protection. With one app, you get a VPN, antivirus, password manager, spam call protection, dark web monitoring, and even up to $5 million in identity theft insurance, all backed by 24/7 US-based fraud support. Other companies might sell just credit monitoring or just a VPN. Aura gives you all of it, together, at the same price competitors charge for just one service. Start your free trial today at aura.com/remove. Protect yourself now at aura.com/remove.